OTAs. How amped are you, buddy?
Electric. There's nothing more electric than OTAs. For those of you who are not aware, it's guys are just hanging out, practicing a little bit. Can't really do any contact, but it's the first glimpse of what the team might actually theoretically look like.
10 days of OTAs, pardon the rhyme, no live contact. Then 2 days of mandatory minicamp. Are they allowed to touch in mandatory minicamp?
I'm not sure. It might
Neither
be
am
like a COVID situation, 6 feet away. You can pretend.
That's Roger Goodell's NFL. Let's go to guys who do have to touch. A lot of pushing, a lot of shoving. Offensive line. I saw John Feliciano, who is very active and definitely calls it X, out here claiming that the 49ers offensive line is being unfairly maligned. I suppose I could just read the tweet, Jake. Let's pull this up here. Everyone on the team are first ballot, ballet, Hall of Famers. To be able to have so much success in spite of that blank O line, laughing emoji. Besides John Feliciano totally ruining the reputation of the academics of the University of Miami, what do you make of just in general the 49ers offensive line and where it fits in the grand hierarchy of the NFL? Because I do think there's some merit in the argument that both Brock Purdy has made and now John Feliciano, I suppose, has made through his X account.
Yeah, I think the 49ers offensive line is like the bastion of mediocrity, where it's sort of in the eye of the beholder, and some people like they're incredibly underrated, and then there's a lot of people that are like they're garbage. And the reality is that they're okay. They're never going to be great. They're never going to be like truly, truly terrible. Because usually they're guys that are just somewhat competent and can survive. And it's sort of Chris Forster, their offensive line coach's philosophy of like, just get guys to be able to function and survive out there. So to me, it's a lot of guys that are almost Swiss Army knife capable, where you can kind of just plug them in a few different spots and they have enough athletic ability to survive, but they're not going to be elite for the most part in pass protection. A lot of them are going to be able to get out and run, but it's not going to be sexy. Like, you're going to see some ugly reps at times, and they haven't invested enough to ever be like a top 10, even top 15 is like they got to have a good year to be a top 15 O-line. To me, they're usually like in an average year like the 18th best offensive line in football. That feels where they reside.
I almost think that the Niners are getting a worse rap, and it's because of a sort of cognitive dissonance that is currently existing in the NFL. We can all overtly see that the 49ers offensive line isn't very good. The problem that we have, I think, as folks who cover one team and certainly as fans who really only watch one team on a regular basis, is that level of mediocrity, as you put it, just the crappiness, as I'll put it at times, that is in fact pretty good by modern NFL standards. You think you got it bad because you know what a good offensive line should look like. But, buddy, we don't exist in a market where there are good offensive lines. I mean, there's like one good offensive line in the NFL, Jake. I know that offensive line talk isn't sexy, but this is where we're at. It's May 27th. Am I off base in the notion that there is like one good offensive line and everyone else just kind of sucks?
Yeah, I assume you're talking about the Eagles and then everybody
right.
else. Yeah, I mean, and they also have like the best offensive line coach in football, where they'll take somebody who played rugby for 2 years, has never actually pass blocked, and turn them into an all-pro. Yeah, I think that's accurate. It is an age where I think offensive line coaches around the league would agree with you that offensive line play has gotten worse. And maybe some of that's college, and that there's not a lot of translatable skill sets, or the schemes that they're coached in are a little bit different, or
Well,
the terminology takes a lot. But yeah,
along those lines, Jake, I mean, you just scouted how many offensive linemen, and your general takeaway of watching college offensive line film was what?
it's yuck. It's a lot of like, oh, this guy could maybe be something. And personally, I liked last year. There were some interior offensive line guys I liked a little bit more.
Mhm.
This year, it's tough when you get a class where you recognize it's not great, and you're trying to convince yourself that one guy who is not actually elite. You're like, well, maybe in the context of this class, he's better than what he truly is. But yeah, I think you get a lot of raw prospects where you get, especially with offensive tackles in the first round, you'll get guys that are specimens. and you're like, okay, this guy's a specimen, but can he play? I don't know, but he's going to go top 32.
And you're hoping that you have a Jeff Stoutland, or in the case of the 49ers, a Chris Foerster, to where you can get the most out of whatever that might be. In the case of the Niners, they're not taking those specimens. They're taking guys who maybe have a bit more experience, are a bit better scheme fits, might not have that pedigree, that 5-star rating back in the day, and just hoping to make chicken salad out of chicken. Well, I'll let John Feliciano put it that way.
They just take anybody with a good 3-cone score in the combine, and that's pretty much it.
What is it? The gauntlet drill for wide receivers, apparently, and a 3-cone score for offensive linemen?
Yeah, and the broad jump for defensive tackles.
Who says the combine doesn't matter? Can we quickly just go through the 49ers offensive linemen? I promise we'll talk about sexier positions in a moment here. Though I think that anybody who knows us knows that we think these are, in fact, the sexiest positions out there. Big boys for life. Colton McKivitz, a tricky guy to evaluate in general. He was arguably the 49ers' best offensive lineman last year. He was not overtly a great offensive lineman last year. And now his contract is sort of in question. He's making probably less than he can get on the open market, seeing as Jalen Moore got, $15 million, $17 million?
15, I think, over 15 a year for 2 years from the Chiefs.
So Colton McKivitz's backup got $15 million a year. What did the Niners do with Colton McKivitz, and can the fan base stand it? Like, this is a tricky spot.
Yeah, Colton McKivitz is like, it's the thing about him is he was good last year. Like, he was objectively good, not great. No one's ever going to argue that he was great because he wasn't, but he was steady, and I think like Mike McGlinchey scarred a lot of people because McGlinchey was actually, for the most part, pretty good, but when it was bad, it was the worst thing you'd ever seen. He would topple. He's a long, thin, guy where the center of balance, as soon as it goes, like he's landing on his butt. So McKivitz, I would say, probably has less of that, but there are some times where it's really, really ugly. Last year he was fine, and the 49ers are getting a cheap price. Right. I would guess they probably lose him next year in free agency because the standard of O-line play is so bad that I bet somebody's willing to pay more than the 49ers are. And it'll depend how his season goes. But it might not, because Aaron Banks played terrible last year, and then the Green Bay Packers came in with like $20 million a year. Again, he was terrible, and the Green Bay Packers paid him a lot of money. So I think the 49ers would probably like to keep Colt McKivitz, but I would guess the price gets a little bit too steep for their liking.
Well, that's fascinating. It's great that you bring up the Aaron Banks point, because you and I spent all of last year, and that is only borderline hyperbole, stating that the defense's entire goal of the game was to attack Aaron Banks. I'm a big proponent of, I don't need to tell you who's good. The other team will tell you who's good, and the other team will tell you who's bad, because these guys' jobs, millions in salary, are on the line, and they have to figure out a game plan. So they're not going to worry too much about aesthetics or anything. If that guy sucks, we're going at that guy. If that guy's good, we're going away from that guy. I got kids to feed. Aaron Banks was the number one target on the 49ers offensive line last year, and that guy got paid big bucks by the Green Bay Packers, who I guess just didn't get the memo because they had a bad quarterback behind the center that day and didn't notice Aaron Banks.
Yeah, it's interesting. They let Aaron Banks go, and left guard is suddenly a really funny spot where it's like going to be Ben Barch, and then I guess rookies and Spencer Burford will compete, and then there's Connor Colby and Drew Moss. It's kind of the ideal that we were talking about with Chris Foerster.
Zakelj as well. Got to get Zakelj in there. Can't get rid of Zakelj.
Sure. It's what Chris Foerster wants, right? He wants a bunch of like sort of mediocre guys all competing and seeing if he can coach them up and who comes out of that gauntlet.
He's going for the San Francisco Giants model, it sounds like, at least the Farhan Zaidi version of it. Dominic Pooney had an unbelievable start to last season. This is a classic example of always make a good first impression, because Dominic Pooney's play sort of slid more and more, and it never got bad. I don't want to impugn Dominic. Don't want to impugn the Poon. But Dominic Pooney, it was pretty clear that teams started to get a game plan on how to attack him. What are you expecting from Pooney in year two? And could he be that right tackle that slides over should McKivitz get injured or leave after this season?
I think they want to avoid a situation where they have to move Pooney. I think they're comfortable with him there. I think they did say he could theoretically play tackle because, he did in college, but I
Right.
think they like him at right guard. It's interesting, behind McKivitz and Trent Williams, they bring in DJ Humphries, who his agent was like, yeah, he was really unhealthy last year, but he's healthy now, which is not exceedingly inspiring when you
Jake,
sign a
have they in
guy.
fact brought in DJ Humphries? I was under the impression they haven't signed that contract yet.
Well, his agent said he signed with the 49ers, so I'd
Yeah.
have to check on that. But it
We
was
will actually
DJ.
have to look in. The fact is that we
Yeah,
don't even know if he's on the team yet in DJ
right.
Humphries, so that can't be a good sign for
Well,
if DJ
yeah.
Humphries is good.
Yeah, so it's DJ Humphries, Andre Dillard, and Nick
Mm-hmm.
Petit-Frere. Petit-Frere has objectively had a terrible career.
Okay.
Dillard had, I think, like one good year, if I'm not mistaken, with the Packers. He's at least of a higher caliber. So they're going with veterans, I think, is their ideal behind McKivitz and Williams rather than sliding Pooney over.
Yeah, I think it was with the Eagles, by the way, which is not, in fact, a surprise. Jake Brendle. Oh boy, your namesake here, Jake, is it's been a rough, I would say, 2 years for Brendle. Obviously, a lot of it tied to injuries. When he's healthy, he's actually a pretty damn good center. He was, I think, a Pro Bowl alternate one year. There's a lot of things to like about Brendle when he's healthy. The problem is he's never healthy, and you can't expect him to be healthy at this point in his career and the position that he plays and the weight that he plays it at. And I know that the 49ers are very specific and at times idiosyncratic about what they ask their centers to do. But can the Niners keep living like this with Jake Brendle unable to anchor? And now it seems, at least as we saw last year, really unable to get to the second level as well.
Yeah, they seem content. They seem to be, every single time they were asked about Jake Brendle, they were defending him almost incessantly.
Right.
And I will say, to Brendle's credit, he looked like he should be benched for the first probably month of the season. And I don't mean that to be,
No.
fun or hyperbolic. Like, he was terrible, and he couldn't anchor.
He was a bottom 10 center in the NFL for the first
He looked rough.
6-7 weeks. Yeah.
And then it evened out, and there's something to be said. I think Alex Mack used to say it, where like there's some scar tissue in your knees, especially as an older center, older offensive lineman, that needs to burn down and get the grease going in the wheels,
That's
get things
the Alex
moving.
Mack that retired at age 34.
That's correct. So not exactly the most inspiring thing to say, but I will say Brendle, he improved, but it wasn't impressive. And so you look behind him, and it's like Sigle and Matt Hennessy and Drake Nugent. Again, it's a bunch of guys that give sort of energy. It's just middling, meh. I think they're just going to bet on Jake Brendle because they wouldn't have saved much by cutting him, and they say he knows the system. I think for the 49ers, they probably put too much on the centers to set protections and knowing how the offense runs. And so the idea of trying to train someone new and not necessarily being in love with any of the centers in the draft, a position that, again, they put a premium on veterans, but not really on young guys at the center position. I think they just go with what they know, and they're going to not feel thrilled, but they're going to feel okay about it.
Well, that's the 49ers offensive line in a nutshell. Not thrilled, but you feel okay about it. We presume Trent Williams is going to show up to work, right?
You always think he is until he doesn't. So I would say yes, but if he doesn't show up, it wouldn't surprise me in the least.
Okay.
And then everyone will say it's fine. And then you get to training camp and you're like, why is Trent not here? And they're like, don't worry about it. He'll be here.
Andre Dillard's doing great. Don't worry about it. This won't be an issue in the regular season at all.
I'd expect him there, but if he doesn't show up, it wouldn't shock me.
Real quick, who do you think wins the left guard job? If we're projecting out, it's September 1. Who's won the job?
I'd say Ben Barch. I mean, given he had a very, very small sample size last year, but it was impressive, and he was better than Aaron Banks. And when he went down, I was in the locker room after he got hurt, and the look on the faces of players on that offensive line were like, damn, we were starting to get something. We were starting to get somewhere with Ben Barch. And again, extremely small sample size, but if you want the leader in the clubhouse, he'd be it for me.
That is a indictment on the 49ers 2024 season. Ben Barch goes down after a game and a half, and everyone's like, well, that's the season. Can't do this thing without Ben Barch. But to be fair, Ben Barch was totally sick for that game and a half. He was absolutely magnificent. I believe you and I have both called him a revelation separate of each other, which, again, a big indictment on the 2024 San Francisco 49ers. We'll see what it means for the 25 49ers. Talking to Jake Hutchinson, the Hutch Report. You can subscribe right now. Ben Solak, enemy of the show? Is he an enemy of our podcast?
I wouldn't say an enemy, but
No.
it's and you know, it's tough. It's tough when you're a film nerd guy online. It's
I'll give you that.
It's a tough look. It's tough to pull off.
It is. Regardless, Ben Solak, he works for ESPN now. It had this interesting note on Christian McCaffrey, something that all of our eyes could have told us, but he has now quantified it, which might be the Ben Solak experience right there. NFL Next Gen Stats had his minimum speeds in the 4 games that Christian McCaffrey played last year. Maximum speeds, I should say. It would be incredible if these were his minimum speeds. His maximum speeds per NFL Next Gen Stats in the 4 games Christian McCaffrey played last year: 16.4, 16.7, 16.1, and 17.4 miles per hour. 17.4 would have been the Buffalo game, which he unquestionably looked like himself for the first time again. Contextually, this is Solak. Sorry, that was a bit of a Dieter aside. Context, that 17.4 would have been his 5th worst in a game during the 2023 season when he was the MVP of the 49ers Super Bowl-bound offense. Christian McCaffrey, this is. Of course, Brock Purdy got more MVP votes, neither here nor there. He clearly looked less springy in 2024 than he did in 23. In fact, he looked like a player who had a cool 417 touches in the previous season. Who would have thought that a guy who had 417 touches and then Achilles whatever to the point where he had to go to Germany mid-season would not look as fast? Will we get the old Christian McCaffrey back, or is he just a candle in the wind?
I wouldn't say we're going to get the old McCaffrey, but I would expect a better version than what we saw last year. To me, there was also an element of tentativeness on his part. He is as focused on protecting his body as any player in the NFL. He spends a ton of money on it. He spends a ton of focus, and he's very, very protective of his information and what's actually going on with his body, which is why the situation was so weird. Because it was like he's going to Germany, but he's fine, and he's going to start the season, but he's not. And no one could really find out exactly what was going on, and he made it that way.
The only way we found out he went to Germany is someone took a photo of him at the airport.
Right. But it's like state secrets. Like he keeps it close to his vest. So I would expect, like, besides treatment and all that and recovery, he just didn't play much last year, and the 49ers had a long layoff. I think that alone, for some of these guys, like, that's a huge benefit for him. So
totally,
I would expect a better version than what we saw last year. The question, as always, with McCaffrey is, will it last? Will he survive the season? And that I couldn't possibly tell you. But I would expect closer to that 2023, right, MVP-ish campaign than what we saw last year, where it was weird and felt like almost he shouldn't play at all. Right. And he didn't feel like he was comfortable being out there. And we all saw it looked wrong. And then he's like, no, it's fine. We're fine. I didn't play well, but it's fine. Don't ask any questions.
It feels fundamental to any shot the 49ers have of making this season deeply interesting. I think it can inherently be interesting in that they have inarguably the easiest schedule in the NFL. They should have a tremendous amount of players back from injury, including McCaffrey. I do think that this is double-digit wins or bust for the 49ers, given all the advantages that have been handed their way by the NFL. At the same time, you look at the overall talent level of this team, and I think it's unquestionably gone down. And one guy who can sort of be a panacea to all of that, especially on the offensive end, where you have questions at X receiver. As much as you and I both love Ricky Pearsall, it's a question at Z. Juwan Jennings is great and all, but does he show up to work? What's his deal? Do they play him at X? I mean, there's a lot of questions at the receiver core, questions as we went through on the offensive line. If you have Christian McCaffrey firing on all cylinders, and that might only be 5 of the previous 6 cylinders, if you have that going, that can change the fundamental output of an offense and get it into a pretty respectable level. I mean, it wasn't a terrible offense last year with all the things that went wrong. Imagine what Christian McCaffrey, not just running the ball, but catching the ball out of the backfield could do for this team this upcoming season, and especially early when you know you don't have Brandon Aiyuk, when you might not even have an X receiver on the roster. All things considered, like you have to have Christian McCaffrey. You have to have Christian McCaffrey going something close to 100% from week one on, especially with Seattle on the road in week one. That's a division game. And you and I have talked about this before. First month and a half of the season, you could already have lost the NFC West because there's 3 division games. All of them are going to be tough. You might have this easy schedule, but if you want to win your division, which should be your number one goal going into any campaign, you better hit the ground running. And I think that means a lot of Christian McCaffrey early, and it means good Christian McCaffrey early, at least to me.
Yeah, I think it's crucial. I think especially you mentioned it with the wide receiver situation. They bring in Demarcus Robinson, right, where they know Brandon Aiyuk maybe the second half of the season is when he returns. But even if when he returns, the expectations have to be pretty low for him coming back from this year where his knee, it wasn't just an ACL. I think it was an ACL, MCL. I want to say PCL as well. So like his knee,
it was quote other ligament, and I'm like, I don't think there are any other ligaments to tear in there.
Yeah, it's worrying. And so you have Ricky Pearsall, Jawan Jennings, and then Demarcus Robinson, who likely, it hasn't been confirmed yet, but the league mandated suspension would be 3 games, right? For drinking and driving.
Yeah.
Right. So that would be he'd be out for the first 3 games, which is when you need him most. And then it's okay, Jacob Cowing, step on up, or Jordan Watkins, rookie wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
Outside of that, it's like, do you like Isaiah Hodgins? Are you letting Trent Taylor play meaningful football for you? So, yeah, you got to have Ricky Pearsall fire. You need Ricky Pearsall firing.
You unquestionably need that too. That's
but you need thing. McCaffrey. You need McCaffrey to operate for you, especially as a receiver, especially just healthy. Just his presence alone can make things really, really a lot easier for you.
Who's Christian McCaffrey's backup this season?
His number,
if you had to, if McCaffrey is out for a game, who's the lead running back?
I would guess it's Garreno.
Okay.
But I do think there's a level of trust they will have in Jordan James over Isaac Garreno. I think there's a level of he played a lot of college football, the way they've talked about him, the sense that he can like just fit in and he's going to do the right thing, and was very productive. Well, sort of like, Bobby Turner, the legendary running backs coach they have who, he is the guy who sort of dictates how that operates, and he seemed to love Jordan James. I thought Isaac Garreno, he struggled early, which we knew because he missed all of training camp, and he's a developmental guy who didn't really know how to play the position, and then he missed a ton of games. But I think before he got hurt, he started to turn a corner, and I think they're going to leave that competition open in camp. But what we saw from Garreno, I think you'd have to ride with him if he's healthy and let him just play, because the explosion, the high ceiling there is really meaningful. But I also think he's less trustworthy than Jordan James.
I don't know if I ever peg this in all of the moves that have happened this offseason, but that running back room, which going into training camp last year, you look at it and you go, okay, you got Garreno, who is developmental, right? But like a lot of traits that you really like. He's your rookie. He was 4th on the depth chart, right? He might have even been 5th on the depth chart behind Patrick Taylor, the special teams guy who does nothing for you on the offense. It's just nothing. I don't understand what's going on there, but they're all about the special teams now, baby. But you had Jordan Mason, JP Mason, and you had Elijah Mitchell, at least at the start of training camp last year. Now, we all know what happened with Mitchell. Same old story. You're looking now at McCaffrey, yes. Garreno, maybe there's a knee issue there that everyone's optimistic, but maybe there's a little bit of touch and go, at least at the beginning of training camp. I guess this will be a good week to find out where he stands. You have James, the rookie, and then you got Taylor Israel Abanikanda, who is, sorry to say, just a guy. And then Corey Kiner out of Cincinnati, who I don't think either of us thought he was draftable. This feels like a reasonable spot for him. He might have a better shot with the 49ers than he would have with another team. I'm not looking at this depth chart, and it's pretty thin pretty fast after Christian McCaffrey. And it's not like Christian McCaffrey can be counted on to touch the ball 400 times anymore.
No, it's not inspiring. I would say Jordan James, what he brings is a guy that, like, he's not got elite explosion, but he's got like a one cut where he can get you back foot and go, and he will mostly do things right. Corey Kiner is like a straightforward inside zone physical runner who has really very little elusive qualities to him whatsoever. And then Patrick Taylor, we saw he was a brutal watch on offense. And Abanaconda's a guy that like people will be like, remember how fast he is, remember Hard Knocks, and then you watch his tape and there's not much to chew on. So yeah, it's pretty ugly. And I would say Garreno clearly has the highest ceiling. And if it was me and McCaffrey were to miss games, I'd lean on Garreno, and I'd probably have Jordan James as your third down back.
Which rookie do you think is going to have the biggest impact? Is it just as easy to say the guy that they took 11 is going to have the biggest impact?
Yeah, well, that's the obvious answer. I think it's whichever defensive tackle plays the most, because
Interesting.
I would say Michael Williams is going to have an enormous impact, but they do have Sam Okuanu, who's actually underrated and pretty good. I don't know about underrated, but he's like under the radar. And then they
no
still
one
do
talks
have
about Sam Okuanu.
And then they still have Yetur Gross-Matos. So like they do have two like capable edge players, right? And so Michael Williams is huge, and like literally, and in terms of like his presence. But I would say defensive tackle is clearly the more important spot. The X factor for them is Alfred Collins, who not healthy. They kept that under the radar. He was in a walking boot at the Texas Pro Day. Didn't participate in rookie minicamp that we saw. We asked if he was cleared, and he said he'll be fine, which is a very cryptic, not yes answer.
So much fun.
But him and CJ West, one of those two, like whichever one of those is healthy and can gain like an early down role, I think that's going to be the most impactful rookie for them, because they need somebody to eat space. And that's sort of by design, where they drafted a bunch of small, fast guys at the second level, sort of with these like the idea that Alfred Collins and CJ West could eat up space up front and protect them, even though they sort of want to change how Alfred Collins plays, even though that's sort of exactly what you need.
Can I throw one more name at you here? Because I do think just looking at the depth chart, understanding what's happening on the depth chart, I'm not a big Marquise Sigle fan, but he looks like he's going to get every opportunity to not just get snaps on this team, but maybe even start for this team if he has a good enough training camp.
Let me read you off the names at safety. Malik Mustafa might, he's trying to say that he'll be ready to go. We don't know.
Come on.
We don't know.
He just had ACL surgery.
Yeah, we don't know exactly when he's going to recover, but the idea that he's going to be ready for week one is, I mean, maybe he is, but it feels a little optimistic. Outside of them, it's Marquise Sigle, Richie Grant, who Falcons fans were happy to see go, Jason Pinnock, who like has had some good moments, but is like not that impressive, Jalen Mahoney, who's one of those like, guys you bring in training camp and fans see a couple plays and get excited over, but not too much to chew on. A guy named Quindell Johnson, George Odom, who they just tried to keep on the field and then like could not warrant it. And then Jair Brown, who was really bad last year. And this is kind of his last chance to prove that he can start at safety in the NFL. So it's not a good group. And Sigle should have every opportunity to prove that like he can actually start there.
Fascinated to see what he looks like when we're able to get our eyes on him on a practice field, because if it looks like he has some instincts, if it looks like he's somebody who can get to the spot in time, obviously it's not full contact, so there is a level of inference that has to be made by the observer. But if he looks like somebody who's playing, let's just say at speed, that could be a huge development for the 49ers, because kind of like running back, safety is a wasteland right now once you get past Malik Mustafa, who, by the way, isn't healthy. So how big of a loss is Mustafa if he can't go here, let's say, until mid-October? We get through that first stretch of the season.
Yeah, it's a huge loss to me. I mean, and safety's been a really sketchy spot for them, but Mustafa, he's like the first guy where they've drafted these safeties where it's been like Tarvarius Moore and Jair Brown and guys where you're like, you can maybe, you see it where there's some athletic traits, but there's a hesitancy there. And Mustafa is one of the first guys where it's like, no, he will put his life on the line and trigger downhill. And Talanoa Hufanga had some qualities like that, but didn't really see it in the back end. Mustafa feels like maybe he's not a true free safety to be able to play center field, but he does have the range and ability to do some of those things. And he does feel like a guy that is like right on the cusp of being a young star. Like I really, truly believe that. I loved his tape at Wake Forest. If you don't have him, you've got you don't have a single answer at safety. You have only question marks. And so having that at a position where the main job, as they used to call it, is erasing big plays. It's
Right.
preventing plays from becoming, turning a 10-yard play into a touchdown. It's a big responsibility, and you really, really only notice it when it's really bad back there.
So we've gone through a lot of positions on the 49ers depth chart, talking to the great Jake Hutchinson, the Hutch report on Substack. Um, are the 49ers a top-tier team in the NFC this season?
I wouldn't say so. I would
their
say
record
they're
indicate that
frisky.
they will be?
Yeah, their record will indicate that they're a top team. Here's the thing. I think by the end of the season, if all goes right, if you're going to use a rose-tinted optimistic view
Let's
of
do
how
it.
this season could go, they could, because it's going to be a young team. And if they round into form in the second half of the season where they got a long stretch in the middle that's extraordinarily favorable, and these rookies start to click, they could. I think at the start of the season, the first half, where you might lose the division, I think the likeliest case for them is being a really frisky wild card team where if they mess up some of the games early, some of the other NFC West teams are just more established. They hit the ground running earlier, and the 49ers are, say, 1-2 in the division, and maybe they finish 3-3. I think them being a frisky wild card team where they start to round into shape and some of these rookies start to get a feel for it, I think that's their best chance of success. And they could win the NFC West because it's wide open.
Of course.
But there's a lot of question marks with them.
Should be noted that every team in the NFC West is projected with their Vegas win totals to be above 500 this year. So there is not a lot to be found between the 49ers at 10.5, Seattle, Arizona at 8.5, the Rams at 9.5. Looking at some of these win totals, Jake, I know you're all up on the board. Is there a team that you feel is a bit of a sleeper, a team that you feel is going to outperform expectations, whether they be Vegas win totals or sort of external narrative expectations? Do you like a team in, like, let's say, the NFC this year more than others?
I'm looking at the Minnesota Vikings, and there's just Kevin O'Connell's such a good coach.
Right.
And they didn't have many picks this year, and everybody thought they were going to trade down. And instead, they go, "We're going to take Donovan Jackson, just the best guard in the draft, despite the Cowboys taking Tyler Booker at 11 because they have to draft any offensive lineman named Tyler. Understandable, It's worked for him in the past.
It goes with that.
I would say the Vikings, obviously really tough division with the Packers, but the Packers can be funky. There's a world where they sort of screw around, where the Lions aren't quite right and they lose some pieces and their defense gets sketchy. There's a world where, like, the Vikings are really frisky and it just works out with J.J. McCarthy. And now there's a world where it doesn't work out and they're a nightmare. But I think the way that they've been creative with their defense, even, lacking the pieces on defense, they've been frisky. They've made it tough on teams. The 49ers have really struggled with the Brian Flores defense in those games. And I just think Kevin O'Connell is such a sharp coach. They're at 8.5. I could see them winning 8 or 10 or 11 games.
Yeah, I think Minnesota is perhaps the best run organization in all of football right now. There's a pretty exceptional list at the top. Can I throw a name for fading?
Yeah.
You mentioned about it. Let's fade the Lions at 10.5. You lose both coordinators. You had your real shot last year. The letdown, I think, is going to be pretty significant. I'm not saying that they won't make the playoffs, but I think that they are going to have to fight, scratch, and claw to get to double-digit wins this year, because I think the Bears are coming with Ben Johnson as the head coach. I think that the Packers might fall off a little bit, but they're not expected to be some juggernaut, and there's certainly enough quality on the Packers to where you can't rule them out of anything. And then, obviously, Minnesota. I think that there's 3 or 4 extra losses compared to last year on the Detroit Lions schedule. And now you're looking at Jared Goff and saying, hey, you got to lift us. That's not his game. It's not his game. And I'm very curious to see how the bite your kneecaps off mentality works when you don't have one of the best offensive play callers and you don't have Aaron Glenn, who Aaron Glenn did a wonderful job in holding together a defense that was so injured. I mean, he found the duct tape. He found a way to make it work. I know Aiden Hutchinson is back, but I feel like Glenn was able to be it's kind of like what happened when Robert Saleh left. Like, is Robert Saleh the best defensive coordinator when it comes to X's and O's? Is he a Vic Fangio type? Not really. Really not. But you know what he can do? Get a bunch of dudes to go run through other dudes' faces on a weekly basis, regardless of the personnel on your team or the other team. And that really, really matters on the defensive side. Put your guys in good positions, but make sure that they play at their best. I think that would be the mandate of a defensive coordinator, almost in reverse for an offensive coordinator, right? Just make sure you have really good guys and get them in a good position, and they'll make something happen. So I'm going to fade the Lions this year. Looking at the AFC, I mean, we're all fading Pittsburgh, right? They currently don't have a quarterback.
Right.
This can only go on for so long. At some point, the game is up. It just has to be with the Steelers.
Yeah, and there's some rumblings that there's some questions like, should you start to think about moving on from Tomlin, even though he's never had a losing, season with
Great
Pittsburgh, which
defensive
seems
coordinator.
crazy. Right. Right. He's always kept him in it, but at a certain point, mediocrity is almost worse than sort of clearing the deck and falling way off. Now you're going to regret that, when you're in the wallowing in self-pity and you've had 3 or 4 losing seasons in a row. I hate to say it, but I'm a little curious about the Raiders with Pete Carroll and Geno. I know their roster's a mess.
In terms of playing the over on a win total.
Yes, yeah,
I'm with you. I'm
awful
with you.
about
I'm gonna ride.
But
6.5.
I know that's a trap. I know it's a trap. The Raiders are at 6.5. I know their roster's messy and Jack Besh is gonna start at wide receiver for them, but he's fun. Their offensive line isn't dreadful.
No.
Right? They've got Geno, they've got Genty and Mostert and a few other pretty good backs. Jacoby Myers is fine. They have a crazy high upside wide receiver rookie in Dante Thornton, who might suck, but also might catch 7 touchdowns and have 1,000 yards on 30 catches just because he's an incredible
He'd be the
deep
Nick
threat.
Westbrook-Akine of the Raiders.
Exactly. There's just something where I'm Geno Smith and Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll, he brings good energy.
Totally.
I could see that, even if it's just 7 wins, I know that's not a good bet to say, oh, they're going to win 7, but
no.
I think there's a little bit of something there.
Are we buying in at the Patriots at 8.5? It feels like Drake May didn't show me enough in year 1 to believe that in year 2, this team is just going to go from 4th overall pick to a winning season. I know that their division sucks. I get it. By the way, Miami at 8.5. I think I'm fading them. I love Mike McDaniel, but there's something rotten happening with the Dolphins. Maybe this is just a division play, but it feels like everyone's a little too hot to trot on the Patriots right now, from my standpoint.
Yeah, and it's they still don't really have an answer. They got Stephon Diggs, but is he gonna blow it up there immediately?
He could blow it up emotionally.
Yeah, I guess they got Kyle Williams and their guy Kendrick Bourne and Matt Collins. Javon Baker's still there. They don't seem to want to give him a chance.
Nope.
Yeah, I don't know. 8.5. They feel like a 7-win team this year. I don't feel good about them yet. I feel good about them in a year, right? With Vrabel there, and I don't know.
I'm also wanting to fade the Texans at 9.5. I know CJ Stroud is the truth. I know that they have 5 versions of the exact same wide receiver, but they did a whole offensive line revamp this year, and it was just bizarre. Nick Caserio's out here doing bizarre stuff as the GM of the Texans. I don't like where that team's at. We all know DeMeco Ryans, great leader of men. We all know that defense, when healthy, is wicked. I mean, that is a mean group of SOBs. 8.5. I'm sure that a lot of people are going to bet the over on it just because of the number, and that's how good bettors operate. You just play the number. I'm sorry, 9.5. I don't know. There's something fishy about Houston. I can't advocate to anyone to take the over on it, and I think I might just take the under based on the smell.
Yeah, I'm with you. They've made some weird trades, and last year they were the overhyped team that everyone was in on, and it just wasn't quite right. And I know they got rid of Bobby Slowick, our former 49ers colleague. But I don't feel good about them. There's a gut feeling there that maybe that's not elite analysis, but it doesn't feel right.
No, you got to be able to It's like those guys reading putts on the PGA Tour now. You got to feel the ground. You know, you got to walk the line and feel, is this 1 degree or 3 degrees? There's something off about the foundation in Houston, and it doesn't seem like it's going to get any better. Maybe we got it all wrong. There are some teams that go out there, do bizarre things, and that was exactly what they needed. Maybe that's the shakeup that Houston requires to get to the next level. I'm not buying it from my vantage point, and that's why they play the games. All right, that's going to do it. We will be not live, but we will record after OTAs this week. We will have some availability. Next week, we're going to get some coaches, and then we're also going to get our eyes on the prize out on the practice field. So busy stuff coming. We kind of getting back into the rhythm of it. Then another lull, and then we'll have training camp. NFL doesn't wait on anybody. Certainly doesn't wait on us. Jake, tell the folks how we can get in at the Hutch Report.
Yep. Link is in the description. Just click it. It's free to subscribe. It's all my good weirdness breaking down the 49ers. What's actually going on and how I see it. So, yeah, subscribe there. There will be more good stuff, especially as we get closer to the season. And we'll have some good stuff for you going on.
If you're listening on the podcast, appreciate you as always. I swear I'll be on it more. I swear. Appreciate you hanging with us for as long as you have. If you're watching on YouTube, you know the requisite statement I'm about to make in regards to likes and subscribes and bells. So you can do that. Here's more importantly what you can do. If you want a copy of the updated, amended, focused NFL Draft Prospects Report, Jake has one for the 49ers players, how they fit in, what we can expect. It's all coming your way if you're an official sicko. And you can not just subscribe to the channel, but become a paying member of the channel. That makes you an official sicko, and it gives you all sorts of good goodies. We'll give you the college football watching guide. We'll give you a preseason mag, if you will. But for now, Jake has way too intricate, way too detailed breakdowns of the 49ers rookies and where they fit with this roster. So not only subscribe to the Hutch Report, but also get yourself in as an official sicko on the channel, and you'll get all of those good things and so many more. We'll talk to you after OTAs on Thursday. Bye.